You're listening to SM Media, the #1 place for exclusive content.
Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Scottish Football Show right here on SM Media. I'm Scott McPike, your host as always. Delighted to be here again. Shankers is with me as he is every week. Shankers, pleasure to have you on again.
Aye, good Scott. Another eventful weekend in the football world in Scotland.
It was Wilson won't be joining us for this episode, but we're delighted to welcome a special guest, one of the legends of Scottish football, a well-known journalist, Hugh MacDonald. Hugh, it's an absolute pleasure to be on the show. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks very much for having me on. Look forward to it. Look forward to that. I always enjoy talking about football, you know.
How are we? You good? How's everything been?
Everything's great with me. I'm missing, obviously, going to games, even though in the latter part of my career, Scott, in the last couple of years, I've not been reporting live on games. That was a decision I'd taken myself. You know, I just felt, you know, stepping back and doing more kind of reflective, writing more interviews. Basically because of the absolute weather. I had a kind of epiphany at the Indoor Stadium one Saturday when the snow was coming squeaking off the Ochils, and I said, you know what? I don't know how long I can continue to do this. You know? But one of the things I do is I go to matches, you know, a lot on a Saturday. So the short answer, I'm really missing that.
Definitely. We'll move on to the results over the weekend in the Premiership. Celtic 1, St Mirren 2, Dundee United 0, Hibernian 2, Kilmarnock 2, St Johnstone 3, Livingston 0, Aberdeen 0. We'll dip into all the games over the weekend, but we'll start. Where else do you start but Celtic Park? Celtic 1, St Mirren 2. Hugh, where do you start with Celtic? What do you think of the latest episode?
Well, it's where do you end with Celtic as far as this era is concerned, rather than where you start. I mean, we're now in and beyond the end game, surely, of Neil Lennon's era at Celtic. And it's one of those things that if you've been in Scottish football for a long time, particularly on the press side of it, there's games that you always say, well, that's a sacking game, and I always remember sitting at in Paisley many years ago when in the fourth St Mirren goal and against the Tony Mowbray team, and Stephen McGowan of the Daily Mail, said to me, "This is a sacking story," But how many times have we said that about Celtic and Neil Lennon this season? You know, every result, you know, I felt the two Sparta Prague results, were they sacking stories? Ross County losing at home. It just goes on and on. So I really don't know. I mean, normally I would be very, convinced that it's over. But are they just hoping somehow, Celtic can limp to the end of the season? I don't think that's viable now, Scott. I think something has to be done. It has to be done now, and to retain second place and to have, if the Scottish Cup is revived, I should say, in the next couple of months, that Celtic can have a tilt at that as well.
Yeah, Shankers, what do you make of the whole situation? It's just getting every week we're on here something different, and obviously we've heard the stories over the weekend about Neil Lennon saying the players aren't playing for him. Me, you and Wilson have had debates about that for weeks in the show, but that was my conclusion yesterday. I don't think the players were playing for Neil Lennon yesterday.
I kind of defended him months ago when Wilson says it looks like that they're not playing for Lennon. It looks like they're hanging the manager to dry, and I was saying I don't think any player would, as a player myself, I don't think you could go out and try and no play for the manager. But watching the highlights of the game yesterday, it just, as Hugh said, it looks like a team that just wants to kind of play and get the season over and done with. Well, questionable defending again, but that's just the kind of the story every week with Celtic. But you've got to give credit to St Mirren. It's easy to go to their places and camp in and try and play for a draw or whatever, but when they went forward, they put bodies forward, and and they got the results, and it looked like they played there with no fear, as most teams have done when they went to Parkhead. But as you say, as Hugh says, where does this end?
Hugh, where do you, obviously, when you heard the news about Peter Lawwell during the week and Dominic Mackay's taking over as chief executive, what type of job does Dominic Mackay face? What's the first thing he needs to do when he goes in to Celtic?
Well, the first thing he has to do, of course, is, he probably does inherit this, but, get the a new manager on board and really implement a strategy that has been undergoing at Celtic. There's been various business appraisals of the Celtic model, and really what he's got to do is implement that. And I think pretty clearly what he's got to do is get a system in, almost like Celtic really have to update to be a top European club. And we know that all top European clubs have a simple structure. It's a straightforward structure. You have a director of football, you have a coach, and then you have other staff. And that's what it's going to be. It's presumably whoever coach has been kind of considered or approached at the moment will know that this is the model. But that's got to be the model going forward, to have so that when the manager or the head coach has to go, it's only one little strata of the structure that's going on, and you can replace that, rather than when Brendan Rodgers decided to go to Leicester. It was almost like an exodus from Lennoxtown, which could have actually been much worse if John Kennedy and others had followed him. So I think the chief executive's got a really full entry, hasn't he? But that football side of it, because the football side of it is what matters. Get a coach, get the system in, and he's going to have a huge rebuild in terms of player squad. It's going to be, we could go through to Mark and yourself with a list of who's going to go and who's going to stay, and it is really an exodus, isn't it?
No, definitely.
Hugh, what's your thoughts? And obviously, you mentioned touched on John Kennedy there. Do you think he has to go when the manager goes? Or obviously, it looks as if John Kennedy's been promised a job at Celtic in some form, but surely as he's assistant manager, do you not think he should also take some flack as well as the manager? I know Lennon's front line, so he'll take it all himself, but what's your view on the assistant manager still being there, possibly?
I think the whole coaching staff's got to take it on the chin, Mark. I mean, I think, that, if you look at this, I'm not a coach, I haven't got any badges, but I've watched a lot of football over the years. And you know what you're watching in front of you. And there's times when you're watching Celtic where you feel you're watching a team that's just not coached or is not. I mean, I don't know what at times Celtic's strategy is when I'm watching them live. Obviously at the moment it's on the telly, but I mean, I've just finished watching. Okay, at a very much higher level, watching Liverpool. See you just come off the park, Mark. Thanks very much for maybe Big Jurgen must have given you the last 10 minutes off to give it. Just watch Liverpool with West Ham, and both different styles, obviously, because different level of players, different assets. But you could look at that game and you know exactly what the both managers are setting out to do. You know they've got a strategy, they know they've got a game plan, and more importantly, you know what the players have been, are well briefed. So I think that's been a huge problem for Celtic. That question when people thought a team with an identity. I've not seen an identity with Celtic, certainly this season, and all the coaches have got to take responsibility for that, not just Neil Lennon. My thoughts is that John Kennedy seems to be a favoured son at Celtic Park, and there's been, as we know, there's been rumours that if there was a director of football, and that seems to be the role, is definitely going to be created, that he was in prime position for that. Now, I've not got any inside information on that. I'm just reporting on what I hear. So, will he stay and become director of football? Who knows?
We'll move on to Kilmarnock. Obviously, Kilmarnock at St Johnstone's. Kilmarnock were 2-0 up at half-time, but lost 3 goals to St Johnstone, and it saw the end of Alex Dyer as Kilmarnock manager. Hugh, were you surprised that Alex Dyer lost his job after that performance yesterday?
No, I think I think if once you start losing an awful lot of games, your position starts to become outside Celtic anyway. It starts to become untenable, doesn't it? I mean, it looks. And what the big danger there with Kilmarnock, who are already, one of the teams will be hit with a very cold wind that COVID has brought in. I mean, they'll be absolutely in a panic about retaining their Premiership status. By the way, there'll be a few other clubs at the moment in that league that have, Dundee United, for example. They're coming down, they're falling back into the argument as well. So, there's teams there that'll be, looking at to make the automatic but drastic change of changing the manager. And I wasn't surprised Alec Dyer went, because the results were almost made it inevitable, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. Shankers, who do we think could be in contention for the job? I know we've spoke about it with the Kilmarnock fan on the show, but who do we think could be in contention for that job?
I think the problem is, obviously we've heard Kilmarnock's financial situation, that they're looking to borrow money. So do they look at somebody in house, somebody like James Fowler, who's director of football, to save put another wage out? But then if you do go for another manager, somebody like Tommy Wright, Stephen Robinson, people like that who know the game, it's a hard one. But I've said to you and Wilson in the group chat that we've got, the problem is with Kilmarnock supporters is that they're going to compare every manager since Steve Clarke to Steve Clarke, and it's a kind of almost one-off job which Steve Clarke come in and done and take them to third place. And they maybe need to realise that they're not going to get that every season. Maybe competing with the top six, but the third place finish that they got is a one-off, and I think they maybe need to lower their expectations a wee bit, and maybe, obviously, Alex Dyer, they found themselves in a position that they shouldn't have been in, but I think they need to be a wee bit more realistic, because Steve Clarke was a one-off for them, and they're not really going to get that again anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. Couldn't agree more. Hibs had a good result away at Dundee United on Saturday. McGregor and Boyle with the goals. We spoke about it last week, Shankers, that Hibs were maybe in a wee bit of dip in form, but the past couple of games have brought it. They've been playing some good football, and now if Celtic don't get out of a slump, Hibs could be in a contention to push Celtic for second place.
When I watched Hibs back yesterday, I think it wasn't a great game. I think it was because Dundee United were so poor. I don't think Hibs won exactly. Didn't think they dominated the game, and they deserved their win. But I didn't think it was a overly convincing performance. I just think Dundee United are lacking a real bit of quality from middle to front. Obviously, the strikers, Lawrence Shankland and McNulty and Nicky Clark. But see when you go back into midfield, I don't really see him that can supply them really. Like a Butcher and that. I don't think that's their type of game. One I looked at was Stevie Marlin's not really playing for Hibs a lot. He's out the pitch, or somebody like that for Dundee United could be a good one. Somebody that can unlock a pass. I see something different that nobody else sees. But Hibs just need to get back to basics and start picking up wins. Obviously, getting out the semi-final of the Cup, then losing to Rangers midweek. They just need to start garnering a wee bit of momentum again and try and get third, because it's more than capable for them. Yeah,
definitely. Hugh, do you think Hibs could potentially pose a threat to Celtic if Celtic don't get out of their slump?
Well, that would normally be, in normal terms, you would just say absolutely not. No way, Jose. I mean, but you're looking at this Celtic thing, it unravels on a weekly basis. I mean, this is not even not hindsight. I mean, I was receiving texts, from people yesterday, saying, 8-1 is an outlandish price for St Mirren, going to Celtic Park. Now, normally you'd be checking your WhatsApp to see if it'd been hacked by, the lunatic asylum. But it was, you were saying to yourself, do you know what? And the fact of the matter is, was St Mirren at Celtic Park a shock result yesterday? No. Well, it wasn't, because it may have been a shock for the bookies at 8-1, but it certainly wasn't a shock to people I was talking to, who were saying, St Mirren, Jim Goodwin will go there and he'll set them up to go and have a go at Celtic, because that's what your vulnerable position makes you. It makes people. it doesn't even, your confidence doesn't go down. Your lack of confidence feeds the other team, you know. So normally you would say Hibs would have no chance of getting anywhere near Celtic. You look at Aberdeen, I mean, I see on social media everybody saying, "Oh, Aberdeen could catch Celtic." Of course they could, but Aberdeen's form has been as precisely as bad as Celtic's at the moment. You know, it's gone under the radar. But if you look at a team, if a team was if you look at a team and goes 4 or 5 games, say you get 4 or 5, 3 points, 15 points in the trot. My goodness. That would really stir up the league as well. So I wouldn't rule it out. Normally, I would say Celtic nailed on. I still think, by the way, that there's enough there and they can regather to maintain second place. But the very fact we're having a conversation about this suggests to me it's we're dealing in realistic prospects.
Yeah, definitely. Livingston and Aberdeen drew 0-0. Shankers, we spoke earlier on yesterday, and I said if there was ever a game that was a certainty to be a draw, it'd be Livingston Aberdeen. We've touched on there a wee bit about Aberdeen's dip in form. Like, what do you kind of make of
that? When I watched it back, it was probably a fair result in the end up. Both teams had a few chances each, but it probably was a fair result in the end. Just Aberdeen really kind of missed that presence of Cosgrove, somebody up there on number 9. It's going to be a real difficult one for them to replace him, because as much as he was a physical presence, he put the ball in the net for them as well. So it's going to be a difficult one for them to replace him. They were playing with, if I'm not, I couldn't possibly pick who it was that was up front, but it wasn't a natural striker. I think it was McLennan or something like that. I think he's a wide man. It's obviously just because Cosgrove's deal went a couple of days before the game, they've not got a chance to get him in. But it'll be a difficult one for Aberdeen to replace him, because as I said, he was a big presence, but he also scored plenty of goals. Yeah,
Hugh, Fraser Hornby, the under-21 striker, has been lined up to come in and fill the Sam Cosgrove void. Do you think he could do a good job for Aberdeen?
I do. I do. I've been impressed with that kid every time I've watched him play. I'm slightly surprised that the French expedition has been cut a wee bit short from him. Yeah. Because he's a young kid. He's powerful. He's strong. He's very committed to his career. He's one of those young players that's all in on it. I think he could do a job for them. I really do. I think, big shoes to fill. Cosgrove was just really, wasn't just really good for Aberdeen in terms of scoring goals, but getting him up the park, being that kind of lightning rod for everything they wanted to do. He's going to be a big loss, but Aberdeen's got, any Scottish club's just got to take that money nowadays. Yeah, it's just a no-brainer, but Hornby, I wouldn't be surprised if he did well, Scott.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the results covered for the weekend. We'll move on to our Q&A with Hugh MacDonald. It's a pleasure to have you on, Hugh. But see, when you started out in journalism, was it always the plan to cover football? Was that always your plan when you kind of left school?
No, there wasn't any really plan. And the whole thing about me is I never really got to sports journalism full time, Scott, until I was over 30 years in the business.
Right.
I was at there's a long boring story about how I got into journalism, but basically I got into journalism so I didn't have to go to university, because I didn't fancy going and I was supposed to go and study medicine. I didn't fancy that. So I just absolutely decided at the last dash to apply for a job in journalism, and I got it, and I've never regretted it. Never regretted it, because I see, I look at other people's jobs and I go, I just couldn't do your job. And people will say, well, you can't do your own job. And I wouldn't argue with that, but I would say I've survived for nearly 50 years in it. So what I did was I went round the houses, really, in journalism, more than an editing way. I was an editor, of editing text and deciding where text went, and for many, many years. And I only really got into, I always did bits of writing. I did a sports column and I did other bits of writing, but I never actually got into the full sports reporting until I was 50. And the reason it came up was I was deputy sports editor of the Herald and been doing bits of writing, and Graham Spears left to go to the Times, and they said to me, would you do this? Would you consider jumping across? And it was just a perfect time in my life. My kids were up. I was going through a divorce, so so nobody cared if I was on the road or, traveling the world. And I said, yeah, and it was fantastic because it not only introduced me to football or introduced me to football reporting, but Andy Murray was just appearing on the scene then.
Yeah.
So I got to follow the Murray journey, and then obviously, things like the Open's very important, as you know, for Scottish sport, because so many times so I get into the golf reporting as well. So it was perfect for me, and I continue to have a great 15 or 16 years at it.
Brilliant. Who's been some of the kind of best colleagues you've worked with in the media? I know there's a lot of great people obviously working in the media in Scotland, but who's some of your favourite people to work with?
Well, I'm really lucky because I think the Scottish press pack, by and large, almost uniformly, is really welcoming. They welcomed me when I was coming in as a 50-year-old. They could have expected, to be a bit suspicious of that, but they were great, really helpful to me. People that had been around the industry for a long time kind of knew who I was, because it was like one of these kind of, although my name wasn't prominent in the papers, I was quite a backroom guy, and guys knew me because I'd been chief sub-editor of the Herald and all that. So the welcoming, it was great for me to go in and become friends with so many of them. Like Hugh Keevins became a great pal, but Hugh McIlvanney, a guy who I'd actually revered as a kid, and I always remember it's about 40 years ago, covering Johnston Borough for the Paisley Daily Express and writing these kind of McIlvanney type intros to Johnston Borough games. I mean, I wince even thinking and going back looking at that kind of stuff. So it was great to be be friendly with him, and when he came up to Scotland, I always made a point, Scott, of when when we went out for a drink in Glasgow. I don't drink, so at the end of it, he'd say, I'm away from my train, because he would go down, he'd be staying with his niece in Troon, and I'd say, no way, you're going for a train. I'm going to drive you to Troon. And he'd say, why would you want to do that? I said, well, you've got to pay for your dinner. And he says, what do you mean? I says, on the way down, I'm just going to be firing questions to you, because, of course, he sat with Ali after Rumble in the Jungle. He's Alec Ferguson. He wrote Alec Ferguson's, best biography with Sir Alec. He's pal with George Best. Who wouldn't they want? An hour's drive down to Troon with somebody like that in your car. So that'd be the highlights of interacting with other journalists.
Brilliant. And when we mentioned, obviously, favourite colleagues, who were some of the favourite people you met, covering football? Who were some of the best kind of managers, players that you sat down to interview and things like that? And is there any kind of good stories you've got with them?
Yeah, well, the great thing is, what I did was, I never got, probably because I came into it pretty late, 50, I never got cynical about football. And before I was a football writer, I always loved football. Is Scott, I'm just football crazy. I've watched football in 8 different decades, would you believe? From the 50s right through now. If there's, I used to go out before COVID, and I would go out of the park. See if there's an amateur game out in the park, I would stand and watch that. People laugh at me now because I don't go to games to work, but they'll find me at Somerset Park. My brother lives down at here. If I'm down at here, my brother, 2 of us will go, let's go along and watch here. Or, Thistle's not far from where I live, so I'll get a bus down and watch it. So I love all that stuff. So I still get a wow. Last year, for example, I was over in Qatar looking at the World Cup stadiums, for a big feature.
Yeah.
And I met Johan Neeskens. And I was there with other journalists, and they were interviewing him. And one of the younger journalists, well, everybody's a younger journalist, said to me, God, you were really excited there. You were kind of like, your voice was shaking. I said, aye, because you don't know. See, like kids now, they were asking him questions because he coached Lionel Messi at Barcelona. Him and Rijkaard were the guys that gave Messi his debut. But that meant nothing to me. That was like, I'm saying, no, this guy was the second best player in the world at one time. And the best player in the world was the guy he was playing with, Cruyff.
Yeah, exactly.
So he was like, and I always say this as well. One of the great memories is meeting Bobby Charlton and interviewing Bobby Charlton, because it ended because he's such a polite man that he kind of escorts you. I met him at Old Trafford, and he was a director then, so he did his own office. And he's so a polite man. He says, "I'll see you out," So he saw me out, and I always remember we're standing just in front of Old Trafford, and I shook his hand in the shadow of his own statue. And I went, there's not many times you'll do that in your life, shaking a guy's hand, underneath his own statue. So I make no, what's this? I mean, I don't make any apologies for that. I mean, I'm still thrilled to be. I mean, I interviewed John Wark a couple of weeks ago, and I still love listening to these guys, the stories. I interviewed Steve Nicolau a few years ago about, and the stories that they tell about the dressing room. I love all that, I think the things Mark will be different, but for the guys like us that never get inside a pro dressing room in any way, these guys open the door a wee bit so you can just poke your nose in, and I love that stuff. I could go on and on about the interviews, but I suppose the biggest one would be Bobby Charlton. But it's funny, like you get a phone call just at the beginning of the year, when Jim McLean dies, and Alec Ferguson. I wouldn't say I was a pal of Alex, but I'd say I'd know him, and there'd be a degree of, I hope, a degree of trust between us. And when Jim McLean died, Alec phoned me and said, "Listen, I want to say something about Jim, and I want to get it onto what we call the wires. That is the agencies, so other people will know what I think." And so having a 25-30-minute conversation with Alec Ferguson about Jim McLean, as a football lover, never mind a journalist, that's gold dust.
Definitely. Yeah. And then obviously, like, some of the kind of favourite memories you've got, like, in football. Obviously, the Lisbon Lions will probably be a memory for you, like this when Souness came to Irish, things like that. What's some of the ones that stick out to you?
Well, the Lisbon Lions as a kid, definitely. I mean, I'm a Celtic supporter, so I was 12 at the time. I was at, believe it or not, I know if I must have a hard, but I was at primary school at the time. I know people might find that difficult to believe, and I wasn't put back a year. I was at primary school, and they opened up the primary school. It was a holiday obligation then. So Roman Catholic schools were closed, but they opened up, and I always remember that day watching it in the school, probably not realising how big a deal it was, knowing it was a big deal, but I was only 12, and coming to realise over the years just how huge a deal it was. So that would be a fantastic memory. 73, going along to Hampden, Joe Jordan getting Scotland qualified for the World Cup after 16 years of hot. That was a terrific night, terrific. Great Scotland team as well. Scotland team that went to the finals. Really unlucky not to get in the knockout stages. Unbeaten and go home. Other great memories. I mean, one of the great memories as a journalist is 2007, 2008, when both Celtic and Rangers involved initially in the Champions League, flying about Europe. And then Rangers go on this run to a European final. That was really almost surprising at the time because nobody expected it. And then to be on that journey as well was So it's just continued, you know, the amount of right up to the end when, you know, even I mean, obviously I wasn't in Belgrade, but I was in the house watching Scotland qualifying for Euros, and I thought, as an old cynical journalist, what I did, Scott, was I kind of convinced myself there was no chance that Scotland could beat Serbia, just to protect myself against any hurt, you know. And my son and I watched it, and I'd kind of convinced him as well, although he was no for the convincing. And despite myself, I got really, really excited. And when Jovic scored, I'm not kidding you, I was sick. I was just like sick. I just went, oh no,
again.
I've got sucked into this again. Instead of being my cynical self, I began to hope and hope. And I was really a physical feeling of sickness about the whole thing. So when that turned around and the penalties came, you know, it's that feeling that you're dancing in your living room with your boy, literally. At 65, I'm actually dancing, me with this bad back to. So football's never lost that capacity for me, you know. And I'm so delighted to have been, you know, to been about some of the greatest moments in Scottish football.
Brilliant. Shankers, you've got a few questions as well, so I'll pass the floor to you.
All right. I was just a few ones, just for my own satisfaction. Has there ever been a story or an article that you've wrote about someone and they've not been happy about it and try to get in touch and had a bit of a problem with it?
Absolutely, all the time. Absolutely, I mean, like, all the time, all the time.
I've seen on like maybe Wayne Rooney and Rio Ferdinand thinking the old cliche one for focus to say, "Oh, I don't read the papers or that," but we all know the day. So, and a few Rio Ferdinand said before, I got his number and I phoned him and that. So I just thought that.
You get that all the time. See, the biggest thing, you know, funnily enough, Mark, I mean, I had a huge row with Gordon Strachan once. I wrote a big piece about he hadn't picked Aidan McGeady for an Old Firm game. And I just slaughtered them for it. You know, I just said, you know, I mean, and then he was quite right to come back at me, by the way, because it was like I had the baseball bat out. You know, I said, there's only, I mean, I think, you know, I said, he's either not playing McGeady was either football incompetence or it was personal, you know. And so he was quite right to have a go back at him. We had, I think what the diplomats would call a robust exchange of views on that. But I was okay with that. I'm all right with that. See, I think, like, you can't, if you're going to have a go at players, and you have to, I don't think you have to all the time. I think there's some, you know, this way of people always saying, slaughter them. I think most footballers and managers say I wasn't like that. But there is times when you can't just say, sit on the fence. You've got to say, no, this is rotten or blah, blah, blah. But you can't then, Mark, think when they come back to you and go, well, what do you know about football? How many badges have you got? How many things have you won? How many teams have you coached to championship? Absolutely entitled to do that. I've got not a problem. But the funniest thing is the biggest arguments I would say in football between journalists and players is caused by man buys. Now, let your viewers know, man buys is the abbreviation for man by mans, where the journalists give you a mark out of 10.
Yeah.
Aye.
Now, players might not read your big 2,000-word article on why the Guggen press is the best way to go forward, or, you know, why Celtic, you know, need a trepartista or whatever it is, and a false nine. But I tell you what, I think they'll read that bit down the sides with marks out of 10. And I had a really funny one once. I was sitting in a press conference at Celtic, and they brought in the player for the press conference, and it was Scott MacDonald. So he sat down, and I was sort of sitting at the edge of the press conference, and somebody said to him, what kind of season, you know, an easy question to start. Well, no, what kind of season do you think you've had, Scott? And he says, well, I think it's going all right for somebody who can't run, can't hold the ball up, can't interlink with the players, can't retain possession, but can run offside. And I suddenly, in about the fifth sentence of that, I said, God, this sounds familiar. This. But of course, it was my man by man's on him for the previous week's game. So somebody looked at me and said, he said, you had the look on you like a wee boy. I'd be about 60 at the time. The look on you as a wee boy that had just been caught stealing the apples, you know. So that was that was Scott's way of getting back at me. And hey, again, fair play to him. I've got no problem with that whatsoever. You know, there's no point in dishing out criticism and then moaning when people come back and criticise you.
Yeah, definitely.
Definitely. Just another one. You touched on it earlier about trust. It was just the perception of the press isn't always a positive. Isn't always looked positively for punters and players. So how do you go about changing that and getting to earn that trust? So to build a relationship, to get them to basically open up to you when you're speaking to them.
It's very difficult. But I always say, it's very, very difficult. But I always say, if you do everything straight up, right, you'll get arguments, and people won't like you, and people will fall out with you, and they won't talk to you ever again. That's happened to me, you know. But I think if you interview people or talk about people, and they know that you get no other agenda, you're just giving it the way you think, and it's straight. You'll build up you definitely build up relationships in the game, and you'll build up relationships that last down the years. You'll build up contacts that know that you're to be trusted, that know when you're saying to them, that they say, this is off the record, and you agree it's off the record, then it remains off the record.
Yeah.
They know that. You'll not go away and write it up. If they say this is off the record, you say, listen, no, it's not. I know where you're going with this, and you just want to answer this question, and by not answering it. So don't answer it, but if you answer it, it's on the record, because this is a question I need. So you've got to be really straight with people, and you'll still fall out with people. There'll still be people that don't like you. There may be even people that will badmouth you. But what will happen is that you can go in, and when you're shaving before you go to your work in the morning, you can say, well, you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I've maintained a certain amount of principles here. I've made mistakes with all this as well, Mark. You know, you make mistakes where and I'll continue to make mistakes, but you wouldn't make mistakes in terms of principle integrity. You don't do things to people that have been previously agreed or outside the parameters of what you usually work. But it's very, very difficult now, the press game, very difficult to get players to talk to people. Players don't need the press the way they would back in the old days, you know.
Yeah.
Clubs actively don't want players to talk to the press. They want players to talk to their own club channels and their own kind of in-house media. So it's very, very difficult nowadays to form a relationship that would be... I'll finish with this. I was at the Hall of Fame about 10, 15 years ago at a press table. All the old sort of... Hugh McIlvanney was there, the great Glenn Gibbons, used to work for the Scotsman, Hugh Keevins, Roger Bailey, etc., etc. And I was just in as a sports reporter. So I was sitting at this table. And there was a queue of people just coming up to the table to talk to the press guys. And the queue was like John Gregg, Billy McNeil, Johnny Giles, Graham Souness. This is literally Tommy Gemmell. I mean, there was just like Dave Mackay. These people were all coming up and they were getting slaughtered, and they were slaughtering the press guys, and they were laughing and joking. All through the meal, guys were coming up. And I just sat there, and I didn't know anything about it because I was fresh to relatively fresh to the actual sports writing fraternity. But I knew then that further down the line, 20, 30 years ago, Wayne Rooney's not going to be coming to a table and having a laugh with sports writers. Or even nowadays, Scott Brown's not going to do it, you know, or Steven Gerrard, or you know, they're not going to do that. That relationship just doesn't exist anymore. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah. I think that's because of all the kind of media training and stuff like that clubs do to players, and they almost, when you see 9 times out of 10 interview, it's almost kind of like robotic, as I like to say. You kind of know what you're getting. It's all cliche stuff. One of the players, I don't know if you've seen James Maddison in English football. He's kind of one of the better ones. It comes out and he's just kind of almost open, and he's a good interview. But a lot of them are just kind of robots, as I like to say, and they've basically been told what they're to say and what not to say.
I think there's a few reasons. The first reason is I think there's a difference between football players and the public. And I'm not criticising football players in any way, but there is. Football players, even in my lifetime, would be in the same pub as you, or sometimes, here's the one, on the same bus as you, or on the same train as you, or you know, or they were generally in a level that, you know, they weren't in another level the way they are now. Second thing is that club thing. Club want that their assets don't talk to the press. And the third thing, there's another thing where players, of course, don't want to talk to the press because they've got burned by them in the past. You know, if you're Wayne Rooney and there's been a salacious story about you, shall we say, in having intimate relations with certain women or whatever, you're not inclined to sit down with reporters and talk about it. And you're right about the media training. I always used to call it name, rank, and serial number. You wouldn't get anything else out of some players. I mean, literally, you would just say it was like an interrogation. One of the interesting things I noticed was, like, you know, Chris Boyd was really amongst when he was at Rangers, Chris Boyd was looked upon as one of the worst to get in these situations because he gave you nothing. Literally, name, rank, serial number, blah, blah, blah. And everybody used to go, oh my God, you know, if they say, who's a Rangers player that Rangers are putting up, then you'd see, oh, I don't know yet. And then Chris Boyd would come into the room and you'd go, oh my God, how are we going to get out of this? Then he went to America. And see, when he came back from America, he was completely different.
Yeah.
I mean, like, completely different. I mean, like, the first interview, I always remember when he came in after the American joint, he sat down and he gave us this interview and he went out and everybody was going, who was that? You know, was that guy looked and sounded like Chris Boyd, but obviously wasn't. Who was it? And that he changed. He just switched. He'd watched what happened in America, and he'd also, and here's the clever thing he did as well, when he'd also saw was that, and he'd looked and what am I going to do post career? So it's worked.
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, me playing football, like scoring a goal at the weekend, at the end of the season, winning a trophy is one of the best feelings and a great feeling in football. So what is the kind of journalist equivalent of scoring a goal or winning a trophy? Is it getting a story out before somebody else does, getting an exclusive or whatever?
Yeah, there's journalistic prizes, but I don't think journalists, I wouldn't be, you wouldn't really celebrate them. You'd be, and I've been lucky enough to win them, you'd be kind of abashed, a wee bit kind of abashed about it because, you know, it's not really what you're in. Yes, I think getting a really good scoop is a fantastic feeling. I'm 65 and I still get a buzz out of that. I really do. I get a buzz out of that. I got getting something really good. But see, one of the great things is, although I've stopped doing it, was like a match report. See, if you're doing a match report, and this sounds daft, but matches can change. And see, if a really frenetic night, and all this was live, of course. And I don't think people realise what journalists have to do. I think they go away and they think, oh, the game ends, and then the journalists write their story. That's not the way it works. You're writing a story all the way through the game, and then when the final whistle goes, literally when the final whistle, that's why they call it on the whistle. The final whistle goes, you've got to send it. So if you're sitting in the Stadium of Light in Benfica, and you're writing a story about how Celtic are going to qualify for the last 16 in Champions League because it's nothing each, and a big Brazilian centre forward makes it 1-0 with 2 minutes to go, and you're writing a story about how a big Brazilian has just ruined Celtic's team, and then somebody shouts in your ear, no, he hasn't, because AC Milan have lost in the San Siro, so it's back to plan A again.
Yeah.
There's a great satisfaction of getting all that, getting it done and sending it, and then reading it afterwards and going, do you know what, that wasn't gibberish. I've sent something that actually is all right. And there was a great sense of kind of satisfaction about that kind of thing. I just found it and I say, I'll use it in the past tense because I'm not so much involved in the minutiae and the daily stuff about journalism now. I've taken a wee step back and I do what I want now. But I found it really rewarding, not just in football, but in tennis. I mean, imagine being at Wimbledon and a Scotsman wins the gentleman's singles at Wimbledon and you're there. That's a buzz, is it not?
Definitely.
Aye, definitely. Last one is just, I don't know, you maybe have been asked this before. See, just in football now, I know football's changed a lot since maybe you first got into journalism to now, but if you could, in the world of football, if you could handpick somebody, have an hour's time, you're sitting down with them and pick their brains, who would it be?
Oh,
and why them?
One person in the moment. I've been lucky enough to do it, like somebody like I'd love to have had Maradona for an hour, and just sat and talk to him about his career, because I think it's a daft pub argument, but to me he's the greatest. But if people say Pele, absolutely. People say Messi, I'm not here. I'm just saying that Maradona I always think Napoli have only won 2 championships in their life. Their whole history of the club. The club goes back to 1921. So in the 100 years history, they've won 2 Scudetti, both times with Maradona. So I think that gives it to him. Johan Cruyff, who's also away, because I'm old enough to have watched him as a player at Ajax and loved him. But he was an incredible personality, Mark, as well. And he was also so influential as a coach. I mean, he was you have no Pep, no Man City, no Klopp without Cruyff. No Bielsa, he just changed everything. So I'd love to sit down on him. I got near him once. I mean, I did an interview with him once with other journalists when he came to Glasgow. And the aura he had when he was talking, you knew you were in the... you're just in the presence of greatness. And this is like Dead Poets Society. Imagine having an hour with Jock Stein about even just on some little Lisbon. But if you're talking about now, do you know what? I'm just watching the football today, and I think English football really now is really interesting at the moment. People kind of moan about it because it's so full of money and all that. But it's so full of interesting characters, and I would love to sit down with Klopp for an hour. I'm a Dortmund fan, and I say that advisedly. I go to see Dortmund. I used to go a couple of times. We go every year, me, my son and his 2 mates. We go to Dortmund, and we started that under Klopp. And I just think he's a real man. I mean, it sounds daft, but I'd really like to know more. I've read everything about him and I watch it, but I'd really like to have a conversation about how he motivates players and how he deals with us, because always got to remember with Klopp, and it goes again, it's not Pep Guardiola's fault or anything like that, but Pep's always had the best team and the most money, right?
Yeah.
Klopp's always had the second best team. And the second and third amount of money.
Yep.
I just think, when you look back, knocking Bayern Munich off their perch, coming to England and not only winning a championship, but winning a Champions League and being world club champions as well. Yeah, that'd be. It's a long answer, Mark, but that would be probably Klopp at the moment.
I think one of the best things about Klopp is, I know as a player myself, when you're left out, you hate the manager and etc. But everybody seems happy, even the players that are not playing. Everybody seems in it together, as if they would kind of all saying run through a brick wall for him. He's one of the kind of guys.
Yeah, again, going back to that trip to Qatar, it was 2 other Scottish journalists there, and the 3 of us arranged with a Liverpool guy to go and interview Andy Robertson the day before the semi-final. And we went to the Liverpool hotel. You can imagine what the Liverpool hotel is in Qatar, this fantastic, like a castle. And all the players were just milling about this huge, big kind of reception area. But obviously with security all around and club officials. And Andy Robertson, great guy, sat down, filled their boots, really polite, well-mannered. And you're talking about, he knows none of this name, rank and serial number. He was just throwing out all the lines and things like that. But at the end of it, we're sitting having a cup of tea just before our taxi came. And you had the feeling, when you're watching all the players, I always remember Allison was walking about and Milner and that. And you had this feeling, this is a really happy camp. Just to be the interacting with, and not just with the players, they were interacting with their staff, like the press guys, the physios and all that. It was all like in the best way, like a boys' day, it was like a weekend trip away. Obviously, with the alcohol. Did you know they had that real feeling of bone on me? And I thought, that's terrific. I said, that always comes from the manager. Everything, the whole. It's not just about strategy. It's as well about the way a team plays. That energetic stuff they do, that all comes from the manager. That that hunger, that desire just to run do that extra shuttle, do that extra 5 yards, and you've got to be a special person because all these guys can chuck it. All you guys can say, "Oh, I've done enough here," or "I've got all my money," or "Do you know what? I'm thinking about my next move. What will I do next year?" Like players like Salah, keeping Salah on board when there was a wee period where we thought Salah might have his eyes elsewhere, things like that. Yeah, so I'd be really interested in talking to him.
Yep, I would probably be the same if I had the chance to speak to somebody. That's me done.
Brilliant. We've got time for a few fan questions. Paul Cochrane's asked a fascinating question, Hugh, to yourself. How does Hugh see the next decade playing out for Scottish football? I'm deliberately leaving this open to whether it's a sporting, financial or political question. I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
I saw that in Twitter. I thought, what a great question, because I think, we're in a real revolutionary, we're actually at a crossroads in Scottish football. And the end of the 10, that's off the boards now. Rangers have stopped that. That's off the boards. And so Rangers and Celtic, for example, at the top of Scottish football, are going to have to recalibrate. They can't be saying we're paying 50, 60 million pound a year in wages, for just purely domestic purposes. I think I think the Celtic is really interesting. I think they have to revamp completely their operations. They've got to revamp their ambitions, look at becoming much more successful in Europe, accessing how they're going to be successful in Europe, and a type of maybe Ajax model. Everybody says that offhand as if it's so take a magic wand and do it. I think it's not obvious. I think there's going to have to be at Celtic and Rangers. If I was a young player at Celtic and Rangers, 17, 18 at the moment, I would be thinking I had more chance of making it than I would have even last year. I think they're going to have to go down a road where that wage bill comes down. Because they're going to be impacted with the European Super League, which is going to happen. The only question is, does it happen with UEFA and FIFA on board, or does it happen without them on board? I think it happens with them kind of half on board, but it'll happen. No chance of Celtic and Rangers getting into the European Super League. Is there a chance of getting to Super League B or Super League C or whatever you count it? Yes. I think that's a problem. And that brings us into the politics of sport. I think geographical borders will not mean as much as they have with sport before, because the power of UEFA and FIFA is going to be lessened by the bigger clubs, and that'll have an impact for the smaller clubs, because Ajax and Benfica and all the Scandinavian teams outside the big five leagues will be saying, listen, you've hammered us. We've got to have a way. We've got to have a way to make money. We've got to be in a league with, a Benelux league or a Southern European league or a European Super League Division 2.
Yeah.
We've got to get access to this because it's unsustainable. We can't maintain these huge edifices that we've got and tend to be Champions League clubs when we don't have the access to the television money that others have. So that's one side of it. I think in Scottish football, I think there'll be real don't think COVID has the effect of COVID won't be felt until the start of the next season for clubs when they're doing their budgets. Because and I think there'll be a lot of hard thinking about repositioning the league. I would like to hope that there'll be more access for the pyramid clubs. I think one of the most exciting things that's happened in Scottish football is clubs like Kelty, like Cove, like Brora, like Bonnyrigg. I mean, look at the Ayrshire clubs, Auchinleck and things like that. They would bring a real life force to Scottish football. So allow them, encourage them to get into the pyramid system. I see Celtic and Rangers Colts getting in as well, because I think club chairmen will look at them and think, do you know what, we could get 2,000 or 3,000 in a Saturday at these games if it was Celtic, Rangers Colts. We could get better hospitality because of things like that. So I think we're really, with COVID, with the sort of hegemony of the big five, the domination of the big five leagues, the push for the big five leagues, top 18, 20 clubs in Europe to get more of their broadcasting revenue. I think something's got to give. I think the next 2 or 3 years will be absolutely revolutionary in football.
Yeah, definitely. We've got a few questions as well. Shankers, I want to get your thoughts on this as well. What are your thoughts on Ross Stewart's move to Sunderland, £250,000? Do you think it's a good move for Ross? Obviously, would you have played against Ross?
I've came across him and obviously playing in the juniors myself. So, I know of him. What can you say? It's obviously, he's probably feel a wee bit bad about the timing of it. He maybe wanted to stay and help Ross County kind of try and stay in the top division, but how can you turn a move like that down to such a big club like Sunderland? And he's not gone there to Sunderland just to make up the numbers. He has gone there because I think he's got a real quality to be a number 9 for them. He's got. I know it's an old saying. He's got everything. He's big. He's strong. He's powerful. He's got a bit of pace as well. He can score goals. Honestly, I don't think Sunderland will be that'll be the peak. I honestly think he can go further than that. He's still maybe, I'm 25, so he'll maybe be a couple of years younger than me, 23, 24. I really don't think Sunderland's the best he can go. I honestly think he can go higher than that.
Yeah, definitely. Hugh, Ben Davis was linked with Celtic in a pre-contract. We were hearing, it's just come through just now, that Liverpool are targeting a late January deal for Ben Davis. Does that highlight just how poor Celtic's transfer business has been, that Liverpool are trying to get him at the last minute when we thought there was a deal agreed?
You could actually say, does that show how good? You could actually say how good Celtic transfer business has been. Yeah. It's like one of the ones. It's like, see, when Celtic are in trouble, everybody's going to get, and this is the way of it. But I noticed people were shouting and bawling about selling Frimpong. Or what a lack of ambition. You go, no, this is the club model. This is actually the model. Buy somebody for 300,000 and sell them for 12 million. That's the model. That's what it's. So I think Celtic have just been very unlucky in this. They've obviously done, obviously the scouting's been very good. Obviously they've gone down there and they've said to the guy, and they've given an offer. But come on, if Liverpool, who have got no, I mean, Liverpool are playing, Liverpool are trying to bring back Alan Hansen to play centre half at the moment. Gary Gillespie. I mean, look, I mean, you've got Jordan Henderson playing centre half for them at the moment. So they're not only does Ben Davies look at it and say, Liverpool want me. Liverpool, Jurgen Klopp's coming in for me. Not only is he saying that, he's saying, do you know what? See, if I sign for them before Monday, I've got a very good chance of getting a game. This is not like, this is not Ben Davies joining Liverpool with, with Van Dijk and Matip and the rest, all forming a barrier to future success. This is him saying to himself, and by the way, he would still have gone. He would still have gone because, I mean, you're going to Liverpool. Yeah. But it's what an opportunity for the kid. I mean, just and a realistic one is that. So I wouldn't have. I mean, I think that, there'll be Celtic could be criticised on so much this season, but I think it'd be pretty harsh to criticise them on this.
Yeah, definitely.
See, Hugh, just when you touched on the Frimpong thing, obviously you're saying about buying for 300,000, selling for 12 million. Do you think Celtic selling Frimpong for that fee bodes well for the summer when their bigger Rangers and Celtic's bigger assets are going to go? Do you think that price tag of 12 million will kind of almost say to them, we need to actually give a wee bit more to these clubs to prize these players away? Because before, I feel Scottish teams have came up and kind of shafted them for transfer fees just because it's Scottish football. We just need to dangle some money and they'll take it, whereas clubs can maybe afford to knock back a couple of bids and get more money than what has done before for players.
I think so. I think definitely more, because I think the biggest one was Van Dijk, and like it's not been thing me after the event, wise after the event. Just looked at Van Dijk and he said, This is a top notch. I was surprised that nobody bar Southampton came in for him. And he went there for 12, and you went, that's it. But the next one was Tierney, because Tierney was a young international fullback who'd played Champions League football, and he went for half the money than the Crystal Palace fullback went to Manchester United. And I went, that's a real blip in the market. That's something that they'll have to exploit. I think now there'll be a lot more harder trading. I think that what's going to happen, though, is that it's kind of depressed at the moment, the market, because of COVID.
Yeah.
But I think by the time summer comes, you'll see good fees for somebody like Edward. And see, the other thing, I don't think clubs will have Edward really well scouted and all that. And I don't think they'll be put off by his form at the moment. They know this is a French under-21 striker.
Yeah.
He's got a very good score record for the under-21s in France. So I still think he'll go for big money.
Yeah, definitely. We've just got a final question as well. Who do you think, if Neil Lennon or Steven Gerrard was to leave in the next few months or in the next year, who do you think are the names that could replace those two managers? But we'll start with Neil Lennon. I think Neil Lennon's probably a bigger talking point just now than Gerrard. But who do you think Celtic could attract?
What I would like, if it was, I would have liked Celtic to go for somebody who I don't know anything about, right? And I'll explain it this way. I like to go for somebody who's doing a good job as, maybe a lower league German club or a higher league Austrian club, a really good coach, like somebody who's like trying to, the way that you try to source players, like trying to source the next big thing in management, trying to source a Klopp, trying to source a Marcus Rose, well before they get, I'm talking about Klopp's when he's at Mainz or whatever, trying to source a coach before he becomes a big coach, because otherwise what happens, Scott, is you just get into this endless argument about people that you already know.
Mm-hmm.
Like it should be Eddie Howe. Well, fine, should it really is? Eddie Howe would find, that's a very strong rumour at the moment. But I'll tell you one thing, Eddie Howe will find Celtic an awful lot different than managing Bournemouth. And people will laugh at that. But by God, he will, because I always remember Gordon Strachan came to Celtic, and one of the first conversations I had with him, and remember, he'd managed in the English Premier League, he managed Southampton to an FA Cup final, and I said, how's this job, Sean? And he was shaking his head. He said, it's absolutely incredible. He says, at Southampton, he said, I would have 4 pressmen in the Friday before a Manchester United game. He says, at Celtic, I've got 4 press conferences today. 4 today, 4 press conferences. Like, sit down, full, one with the Scottish media, the daily media, one with the Scottish Sunday media, one with the broadcast press in Scotland, and one with the sponsors press, like Sky. So I've got my whole day, my whole morning, other than looking at the team, is doing press. So it's a big job for somebody to take on. But that'd be my answer would be for Celtic and Rangers, go for somebody the way you would go and try and source a player. Go and look, do your research, do your due diligence and try and bring in a coach. Now, Celtic did that with Ronnie Tyler. And some will say it worked to a certain extent, and some will say it was a failure. But I think the end of the 10 gives the opportunity to do that for Celtic. It really does. People will say, right, the slate's clean, 10's gone, rebuild. And I also think it gives that case to Rangers as well, because, after Gerrard, there'll be an expectation of getting another big name in. But how many big names out there will want to come up? 1 or 2, but will it be... We've looked at it before. Big names is risky. Great players, there's 2 different skill sets. Rangers is a huge club. Like Wayne Rooney's not going to do it now because he's at Derby. He's got his gig. But a big player, ex-player, it's a big jump to come to a club like Rangers or Celtic.
Definitely. But that'll do us for this week. It's been an absolute privilege to have you on, Hugh. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Just absolute pleasure.
Good to talk about football with you boys. Listen, and good to have an hour. I hope I didn't send everybody to sleep. We didn't get to the man bags, so we didn't fall out amongst each other. So that's
definitely. I really enjoyed that. Thanks very much for coming on.
Shankland's pleasure as always. I really enjoyed it.
That pleasure's mine. That was great.
We'll be keeping you up to date with the next few days over any news that comes forward, and we'll be making more announcements about future shows. But thanks very much for listening, everyone. We'll see you soon. Cheers.